everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Barbara and I'm so happy that you're here today because today I'm going to be talking about some environmental related books that I really enjoyed and I think that you should read too. So, it's been brought to my attention that I talk about environment-related books a lot. I run a book club focused on this topic, on environment, sustainability, climate change, both with fiction and non-fiction books, but I still don't have any recommendation video. So, here I'm going to do my best to talk about some of the books that I have read and enjoyed. Some of them were for the book club, some of them I read outside of the book club. And I hope I will make you want to read all of these. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, I have here a pile of books, and there are both fiction and non-fiction books. I have more non-fiction books. I picked 10 non-fiction books, and then I have 3 fiction books to talk about or to mention that I enjoyed. So, we are going to start with non-fiction books, and then the second part will be about the fiction ones. So these are gonna be in no particular order. It's not worst to best or anything like that. It's just as they come, okay? So first of all, I don't think there is a person in the world who has not heard about Greta Thunberg, who is a Swedish climate activist who, when she was in high school, she realized what kind of a climate crisis there is in the world, and she decided she is going to make the government know that she cares and that what they're doing is not okay. So she created this school strike. Every Friday she would sit in front of the parliament as a protest, and this became a huge global movement. And Greta Thunberg became one of the most well-known climate activists in the world. So it only comes natural that the first book, and also very easy to read, is No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference. This is a teeny tiny book. It's honestly teeny tiny. It has something over 100 pages. There is Greta, if you don't know. This is not my favorite book at all. I mean, it's really tiny, but it is a collection of her speeches. So some of the topics definitely do repeat themselves, but those are her speeches that she gave at the UN board or to governments or just at the strikes or at the protests. And yeah, I think it is a nice one to just squeeze into one weekend if you would like. You can read this in one day. And some of the speeches or some of the things that she says are super duper interesting, but it gets really repetitive, so just be mindful of that. But it is very short one, so this one I would definitely recommend if you just want to get yourself more acquainted with Greta and what she does basically and what she fights for. Next book I don't physically own, but I listened to this on audiobook, and it is to this day one of my favorite books in this genre, and it is called A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough. It is also narrated by Sir David Attenborough himself, and if you don't know, David Attenborough is very well-known, renowned reporter, journalist, you could say, on wildlife. He travels the world and makes documentaries about nature, animals, plants, and the world in general. He is very well respected, and he wrote this book, A Life on Our Planet. There is also a documentary, I believe it is on Netflix, that is created by Sir David Attenborough himself, and it is basically the same as the book. I still haven't watched it, but I love the book. There were kind of like a comparisons and like a progress throughout the history, like this is how many trees have been cut down in these many years, and it portrays this kind of descent into the climate we have now, and it is just absolutely beautiful because it does portray how terrible humans treat nature in general and how they kind of forget how important nature is to us, to our life. But at the same time, it is also very hopeful. So towards the end of the book, it also brings out some topics that, like, here are things that got better, here are things that we can do to make it better and to fix it and to do better for our planet. And it was just absolutely beautiful, and I definitely recommend. Next book is another book by a very famous person, another celebrity, and it is called What Can I Do? The Truth About Climate Change and How to Fix It by Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda is a famous American actress. I actually didn't know about her before I heard about this book. A friend recommended this one to me, and this book has a combination of different topics, from energy to nature, climate justice, social justice, anything you would think of and more is mentioned here. It is also explained why it's important to protest and why organizations like Greenpeace think it is important to also get arrested during protests and how much that does for the cause. Which, I mean, I know it does sound counterproductive, but it is explained here, and I think it is very interesting thought and very interesting psychology, kind of. So definitely recommend. This is more American centered, so at the end of each chapter there is mentioned what can I do, and there are like a list of things that you can improve, whether in your community, in your personal life, send letter to your congressman, and so on and so forth. And then many different resources and websites and things like that. So this is a really good book that I would definitely recommend checking out. Next up, we have The Future We Choose by Surviving the Climate Crisis by Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac. I will be honest with you, I read this one about 2 years ago and I do not remember that much from it, so this didn't leave out that much of an impact for me. However, I'm not selling it, am I? However, it is still very interesting because this book is kind of set up in a way that here is what the world will look like if we continue live the way we do now, and here is how the world could look like if we adjust the way we live and decrease our impact on the environment and start doing things to tackle this problem. And the difference is absolutely massive. And I think it is very well portrayed in here what the differences are. But as I mentioned, it didn't leave too much of an impact on me. I don't remember any specific thing from the book that I can recall. So it's not absolutely life-changing. However, when I read it, I know I really enjoyed it. I really thought that it brings out these two worlds together very well. That one world that we continue going as we do now, and one world where we decide to do something. And yeah, it is very interesting read anyway, and I definitely recommend you check it out if that sounds interesting to you. Next up, I want to tell you about one book that I don't see around at all. I don't see enough of it whatsoever. I don't know if I've ever seen it anywhere. But a friend, Diana, gifted this one to me, and it is a book that I hold so dear to me because reading all these books, all of these nonfiction books, all of them have something like so negative in them. This is how it's going wrong, this is what we're doing wrong, this is how governments are not doing anything or not doing enough, and we will have to do all this much to make it better, and it's impossible, and it's just, it can get a lot. It can get a lot. This book does the opposite, and I absolutely love it. It is The Book of Hope by Jane Goodall. It is a survival guide for an endangered planet, and it is basically Douglas Abrams interviewing Jane Goodall. So this book is in form of an interview where Jane Goodall and Douglas Abrams met up and discussed things, and then he kind of just writes the book based on these conversations. And it's just so enlightening to read or listen to what Jane Goodall wants to say. This book made me follow Jane Goodall across all platforms, follow her, all the podcasts that she started, everything. I am obsessed with Jane Goodall. She is absolutely amazing human being. What she achieved in her life. This book just talks about how it's not too late. We can still save the animals. We can still save the nature. There is hope, and we just gotta do one thing at a time and do not catastrophize, because it's not as bad as some people would have you believe. And yeah, it's just absolutely beautiful book. I think everybody should read this one because it does highlight the issues while talking about them in a positive manner, in a way that it's not over. It's not over, and there is still hope. So The Book of Hope, definitely recommend. Now, next one. This is a chonker. This one is a very hard one to get through because it is so dense. But once you try and once you do that, you're gonna know so much about the entire environment and the climate crisis and climate change and everything that's going on in this sphere. And it is the Climate Book by Greta Thunberg. It's not written by her necessarily, but she put it together. So this is a book combined of more than 100 articles from different scientists, researchers, professors, activists, journalists. You have very like different range of people. Everybody kind of wrote an article about their part of expertise, so you have a little thing from every corner of climate crisis and the entire issue of it. Some of the articles are contradictory, which I think is very interesting, and I really appreciate that they did that they didn't shy away from it, and they didn't think that that would ruin the book or like kind of like decrease the value of it. I think it's quite to the contrary, it increases the value of it. So it is absolutely fantastic. There are beautiful pictures, there are graphs, and there are so many amazing things. I learned so much from this book. It's incredible, but it is very hard to get through. So this one, if you read one article every day or like 2 articles each week, that would be enough, honestly. So this is not a book you would be able to read in a week, unless you're a crazy person like I did and I read it in like 2 weeks for the book club. But it was a lot. So not easy read, but absolutely priceless, because you just gotta read it. Just gotta read it. Do it. Next up, we have a book I got on NetGalley, so I do not have it physically. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was amazing, and everybody should have a book like that at home. And it is called Nature's Best Hope: How You Can Save the World in Your Own Yard. And it is written by Douglas W. Tellamy. The edition that I read was for children, so it was young readers edition. But there is also adult edition, like a proper book, so this one was released afterwards. And I do want to read the adult one, the real one. But I read the one for children and it was absolutely fantastic. It is focused on the US, so it is especially interesting if you are in the US. But everybody all over the world can be inspired by this book to do on their own research. Anyway, what this book is about is kind of like pointing out how the wildlife is everywhere around us. So let's say you have a house and you have a garden and you have a front yard or like front lawn. It is very different if you plant just grass and cut it short, and that's just what your front yard looks like, or if you leave some space for the natural grown plants. And this makes a huge difference for the wildlife. For example, if you let some natural plants grow, so the ones that are natural to the area especially, not some that are imported, then even the animals will be able to thrive in this area. So, for example, the butterflies will have food to eat. Entire ecosystem would be enhanced by this one act, to have a little part of your garden that would be wild and where you will have natural plants. And it just can change so much, and it can help the environment so much. It is just a small thing, but it is very significant. And this one was focused on the US especially because it did mention specific trees or plants for specific areas. So not relatable at all to Europe, but you can definitely get inspired by this and kind of learn how one thing is connected to another and another and another, this chain reaction in the nature, and how important it is to actually do these little things for nature and for the world. So definitely recommend that one if you want to check it out, and hope you will rewild your garden a little bit. Next one we have is a little bit controversial. I know people didn't read it just out of principle. I know people hated it just out of the principle, but I did read it and I did find some value in it. And it is How to Avoid a Climate Disaster by Bill Gates. The solutions we have and the breakthroughs we need. Now, I know Bill Gates is a rich white man. I do not need to hear that again. I do know that. And he does a lot for charity, but he is also quite a hypocrite. Who isn't, honestly? Let's be real. But with all that being said, if we put that aside If we put that aside, that he claims he cares about the environment and then he flies on a private jet. That's a different story. This book is mostly about energies and about how we need to do better in creating more sustainable energy, but how it is not easy and how it basically works. So this book dives deep into the energy and why we just can't stop fossil fuels immediately. So there are lots of protests and lots of campaigns to stop fossil fuels immediately. And while it's definitely good and the fossil fuels should be limited for the nature, it is also impossible for society to survive the way it is set up today, especially to Western society, to survive the way it is set up today without fossil fuels. We still need fossil fuels to be able to transition to more sustainable energy. And I think this is absolutely brilliantly explained in this book. And I would definitely recommend if you want to learn more about it. It does sound boring, and it was boring maybe at times, but I learned so much about energy from this one and about how this energy system works. And I would just definitely recommend, because it kind of teaches you that it's not that simple. Like, we can do better and we should do better, but the society cannot change tomorrow. The world cannot change tomorrow. The way we have it set up is just not gonna happen. So it kind of adjusts your expectation and makes you feel maybe more hopeful that even the small steps are helping. I think that's what I took from this book. And of course, how the energy system works. But yeah, I would recommend checking this one out if you want to know more about energy. Last two in nonfiction. So we've got The Right to Be Cold by Sheila Cloutier. This is a memoir mostly. Sheila is one of the most famous activists focused on Arctic. She did grow up in Arctic. She is an indigenous person, and yeah, she talks about her life growing up, and then she talks about how the climate change is affecting the life of indigenous people in the north, in the Arctic, and about how she fought to make life better for them, and about how she set up schools and so on, and about all her struggles to be heard when she was fighting this fight. And I think it was really interesting. I learned a lot about Arctic especially, and yeah, this one was a very interesting one. And the last nonfiction we have is Finding the Mother Tree by Susan Simard. This is uncovering the wisdom and intelligence of the forest. So this is half a very academic nonfiction book and half a memoir. And it is combined, and it is combined for a reason. These parts are quite unbalanced. One part is very good and really, if you embrace it, it teaches you so much and it makes you appreciate forests a lot. The other part is done a lot worse, and it would have been great to get more editing in it maybe and better writing. However, these parts connect beautifully in the end, so it is all worth it. I believe the journey is all worth it. But we basically follow Susan Simard. She was the one leading the breakthrough into understanding forests and trees and how they cooperate and help each other. And it's absolutely fascinating to follow. It is a very interesting book, and I thought it's wrapped up beautifully in the end, and I learned so much. And now when I walked in the forest, I appreciate it so much, and I'm just looking at everything around and just seeing the little things, and it's just absolutely fascinating now to walk in the forest, much more than it was before. That is all the nonfiction books. Now we can move on to fiction books. I have 3 of those that I would like to mention. I've read a few more, but I did not like all of them, so I'm just gonna mention 3 that I think are worth checking out. First of all, one that is extremely famous, it even won a Pulitzer Prize, and it is The Overstory by Richard Powers. It is a big one, it is 500 pages, it is very dense, the text is also very tiny. So this is a very long book, but it is a web of different characters on different stories related to trees. Some people saved by trees, some people grew up with trees, some people never had anything with trees but somehow get very connected to them later on. And all of these stories combine in the end, and it's just a beautiful story of nature, of life, and it's amazing. However, it is very, how should I say it, high maintenance book. So what I mean is that it is written in a way that I was reading it, it was written beautifully, but I also knew that I didn't understand fully what the author was trying to say. I knew he was trying to say something, but I couldn't connect the dots. And if I could do that, this book would probably skyrocket in how much I loved it. I did enjoy it, but this part where I did not fully understand, I was not able to grasp everything that the author was trying to tell me. It did drag my enjoyment of the book a little bit, but if you love books that are deep, that have a lot of messaging and metaphors and a lot of meaning between the lines, then you might absolutely love this book because it has a lot of that, and I did enjoy it. I think it was very interesting and fascinating. So, Overstory by Richard Powers. Next up, we have another famous one. And this one is a series. I only have the first one. I did not buy the second one. But it is the Earthseed series, or Earthseed duology. It has only 2 books. It is Parable of the Sower is the first one, and Parable of the Talents is the second one. It is written by Octavia E. Butler. And this is a dystopian story set in a world where there is no more water, there is no more food, or it's very scarce, it's very hard to get by, and it's very hot, and people and the society just descended into madness, and there is crime everywhere. It's extremely dangerous. People kill each other for food and for water, and we follow our main character who is trying to survive in this world and trying to build a better world. And it's absolutely fascinating. I think the second one even more than the first one. I love the Parable of the Talents even more than Parable of the Sower, but they are both amazing. And if you love dystopian stories and kind of climate fiction, then this one is definitely for you. And it put the bar very high for all the other dystopian stories out there. So all the other stories will have a lot to live up to. And last but not least, absolutely not the least, this is the book I should praise the most. This was one of the easiest 5 stars in fiction. If you know me, you know I don't give 5 stars easily, but this book got 5 stars. It was absolutely fantastic. I know it has very special writing, it has very special atmosphere. It's not gonna be enjoyed by everyone the same. It's not gonna be enjoyed the same every day either. So I think if I read it a different time, maybe if I want to reread it now, maybe I wouldn't enjoy it as much. I don't know. It is very special. It is very different, but it is absolutely fantastic, and it's one of my favorite books of all times. And it is Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. And this is a story of a woman following Arctic terns, which are birds, on possibly their last journey, last migration to Antarctica. It might be their last because they are going extinct, the world is going warm, and they just don't have enough food or energy to migrate anymore. And she follows them on this journey to Antarctica. And this book kind of like weaves together some flashbacks from her past, how it connects to her present, to what she's going through now, how she's getting through it. And it is a lot internal study of her character and of her traumas from the past, we could say, and how these birds are kind of like a pivotal point in her life. And it's absolutely fascinating. I adore this so much, and yeah, definitely give it a try. It's a fantastic book. So that is all of the books I wanted to talk about in this video. I will not try to lift all of them up, it's way too many, but it was basically 14 books, I think, if we include also Parable of the Talent. I hope you will be able to pick some of these up and check them up on your own if you haven't already read them, because I know some of you already have read some of them, because few of them were for my book club. So yeah, hope you pick some of these up. Hope they sounded interesting. If you do, please let me know what you think, or let me know which one from these sound the most interesting one that you would like, that you're more likely to check out. And yeah, hope you enjoy them, and hope you find a new favorite. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!